What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 15:51 Eastern Time here in the United States, and I wanted to update you on the situation with the Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska. So the latest news we're hearing is that Trump will be meeting Putin in Elmendorf Air Force Base, which is in Anchorage, Alaska. That's the biggest Air Force base in Alaska. That's where we keep our F-22s. And Fox News is now reporting that U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth may join the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska. So this is absolutely huge news. So Trump meeting Putin at one of our Air Force bases. I wonder if Trump is going to show off our F-22s to Putin. And what's interesting is one of the Russian nuclear war frequencies known as the buzzer, this is one of Russia's primary nuclear war frequencies, transmitted an interesting code a few days ago where they used the word friendship. So this came right after the news broke that Trump was going to meet with Putin. It was literally the day after they transmitted this code that said friendship in Russian. So let me play this for you. This is the Russian buzzer. So very, very interesting. And Trump and Vance will hold an online meeting with Zelensky and European allies before Trump's meeting with Putin. And from what I understand is that Trump held a conference call with Zelensky and several European leaders just a few hours ago, earlier this afternoon. And a reporter asked the White House press secretary yesterday if Trump made a mistake when he said he is going to Russia, or if he was saying that because he was planning a trip to Russia. And Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, responded and said perhaps there are plans to visit Russia in the future. So very, very interesting. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Trump's planned meeting with Putin on Friday is not a victory for the Kremlin and should not be seen as a concession to Russia. It will be exploratory in nature. Okay, so he's not saying that, okay, this is immediately Trump giving away half of Ukraine to Putin. He's basically saying that this is exploratory, so they're trying to figure out more of what Putin is thinking and talk face to face. And Trump actually made some comments today at the Kennedy Center about Russia. So I want you to listen to what he had to say. It doesn't seem like Trump is going to be giving away any land to Russia. Seems like he's maintaining a firm stance against Putin, but I'll let you listen to what he had to say.
With Vladimir Putin Friday in Alaska,
Yeah.
do you believe you can convince him to stop targeting civilians in Ukraine?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've had that conversation with him. I've had a lot of good conversations with him. Then I go home and I see that a rocket hit a nursing home or a rocket hit an apartment building and people are laying dead in the street. So I guess the answer to that is no, because I've had this conversation. I want to end the war.
Okay, so he said he's not sure. He doesn't think he can get Putin to stop attacking civilian targets. And here's another clip. Let's take a listen.
The opposite. No. We had a very good call. He was on the call. President Zelensky was on the call. I would rate it a 10, very, very friendly. I know the leaders because I was at NATO, as you know. I took it from 2% to 5%. The opposite. No. We had a very good call. He was on the call. President Zelensky was on the call. I would rate it a 10.
Okay, so he's saying he had a good call with Zelensky and the European leaders this afternoon. So very interesting. And then let's listen to what he had to say over here.
Say the second meeting, if the first one goes okay, we'll have a quick second one. I would like to do it almost immediately. And we'll have a quick second meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky and myself if they'd like to have me there.
Okay, so he wants a quick second meeting if the first meeting goes well. And let's listen to this clip here.
I think the second meeting, if the second meeting takes place, now there may be no second meeting because if I feel that it's not appropriate to have it because I didn't get the answers that we have to have, then we're not going to have a second meeting.
All right, so seems like Trump is sticking with a firm stance against Putin, and I want to play for you what the German Chancellor said today after meeting with Zelensky. Zelensky and the German Chancellor held a joint press conference, and they basically said that we're not going to give Russia territory. We're not going to legally recognize the annexed parts of eastern Ukraine as Russian territory. So let me just play this for you.
For the negotiations, we made it clear that Ukraine has to be at the table. If there are any follow-up meetings, we want to have negotiations in the right order. A ceasefire has to be the beginning of it. Important elements should then be agreed in the framework agreement. And thirdly, Ukraine is willing to discuss territorial questions, but then the contact line needs to be the starting point, and legal recognition of Russian-occupied territory is not part of discussion. Borders might not be changed through violence.
Okay, so he said borders may not be changed through violence. Legal recognition of the occupied territories is not part of the discussion. So huge statement there from MERS, okay? And Zelensky said that he spoke with Trump, and Trump suggested that they have a possible further conversation and meetings after Trump meets with Putin. Okay, so very, very interesting. Here we have another clip of Trump from earlier this afternoon.
Agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences, yes.
Okay, so he's saying there will be very severe consequences if Russia does not stop the war. That's what he's saying, all right? And Zelensky wrote on X last night that Ukraine is ready for real decisions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine, are at the same time decisions against peace. They will not achieve anything. These are stillborn decisions. They are unworkable decisions, and we all need real and genuine peace, peace that people will respect. Okay, so strong statement there from Zelensky. And Reuters is reporting that Trump's call with European leaders discussed possible locations for a meeting with Zelensky, Trump, and Putin after the Alaska summit. Possible locations included cities in Europe and the Middle East. So we know that Putin wanted to meet in the UAE, so I really doubt that Putin's going to go to Europe, but unless it's in Belarus or something. But I think they're going to go to the UAE if there is a second meeting. There might not be, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens on Friday. And overnight, last night, Ukraine launched a massive drone attack on several points of the Druzhba oil pipeline in the Bryansk region of western Russia, heavily striking the Unicha oil pumping station and resulting in a number of fires that have continued to burn into the morning on Wednesday. NASA satellites are now recording a large fire near the Unicha oil pumping station in Bryansk. So this is huge news, guys. The Druzhba pipeline delivers Russian oil to Hungary and Europe. specifically, especially Hungary. So last night, Ukraine launched a massive attack on this pipeline right before Putin's meeting with Trump. And we have some very concerning news coming out of Belarus. Russia and Belarus are set to practice the use of nuclear weapons, and the Oreshnik intermediate range ballistic missile during the upcoming Zapad 2025 exercises in September, the Minister of Defense of Belarus, Viktor Krenin, said. So the Oreshnik is the missile that Russia used to strike Ukraine back in November last year, and we were actually live when that strike happened. There was a massive air raid alert, and it didn't come out until later on in the morning that it was indeed an Oreshnik, which is a two-stage ballistic missile. It's literally just a modified ICBM. They just removed one of the three stages of the rocket. So now it's just two stages, which gives it more of a medium range, like up to 4,000 miles, enabling Russia to strike all of Europe and the Eurasian area. And that is capable to deliver nuclear weapons, okay? And we also know that during the Zapad 2025 exercises, Russia is going to be deploying 150,000 troops to the border of the Baltics. And 2 weeks ago, we had a Russian drone fly over the capital of Lithuania, over Vilnius, and it actually had some explosive material on it. It had like 2 kilograms of explosives, which is 5 pounds. That's not a whole lot, but the fact that it was sent from Belarus and flew over NATO territory dozens of miles right over the capital of a NATO country, and then it crashed at a major NATO base in Lithuania, in Kaunas. That's where the largest NATO contingent is located in Lithuania. Clearly, both a test and also Russia showing that they're not afraid of NATO. Okay, they're testing NATO. So that is very concerning. So we have to be on the lookout for a possible invasion of the Baltics as soon as September. And the Financial Times is reporting that there are currently no Russia or Ukraine experts among senior officials in the Trump administration. The outlet writes that Washington has entrusted negotiations with Moscow to Witkoff, who has little foreign policy experience, while specialists on the region have been sidelined. And the Russian armed forces have made a major breakthrough in the Donbass region of Ukraine. They launched a major offensive against the front line in the Donetsk Oblast of eastern Ukraine. Some of the heaviest fighting of the war so far is being reported to be taking place along the Kramatorsk axis, with elements of the Russian ground forces having achieved a significant breakthrough near Dobropilya, stretching roughly 10 miles behind Ukrainian lines. Reinforcements are being redirected from other areas of the front as both the Ukrainian and Russian air forces carry out extensive airstrikes against positions on and around the T-0515 highway. So very concerning news. The Russians made a huge breakthrough near Kramatorsk axis, breaking through 10 miles behind the lines. That is very, very bad. Okay, so looks like Russia is going to encircle Pokrovsk. They already took Chasiv Yar, and now they're setting their sights on Pokrovsk and Kramatorsk. This is very, very serious, guys. These are big cities in eastern Ukraine. And China has unveiled a rare video of its newest nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine setting off on an extended patrol mission, with a crew member vowing to state media that he would launch the vessel's nuclear weapons without hesitation if commanded. The Type 94 class submarine carries an estimated production price tag of approximately $750 million, with the fleet previously characterized as China's first credible sea-based nuclear deterrent by the U.S. Department of Defense. Setting sail from China's heavily secured Longpo naval base on Hainan Island, The footage marks the first known public confirmation of this submarine class being actively deployed. Longpo Naval Base is thought to harbor the majority of China's strategic submarine fleet and has recently received the newest J-20 fifth generation fighter and J-16 heavyweight fighter squadrons. So very concerning news, guys. China has deployed a new nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered submarine. That is very, very concerning. And since Tuesday of this week, roughly 800 soldiers with the District of Columbia National Guard will be activated and begin to deploy to streets throughout Washington, D.C. under the orders of President Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. According to orders from the Office of the Commanding General of the D.C. National Guard, soldiers will act as rapid response elements to protect federal property and functions, as well as support federal and local law enforcement in Washington. The order states that the activation will last from August 11th until September 25th, with soldiers to be placed on Title 32 orders, meaning they will not be federalized and will be unable to carry out law enforcement duties. Title 32 usually means that guardsmen will operate under the orders of their respective state governor. However, the president acts as the commander-in-chief of the D.C. National Guard. So this is very, very serious, guys. Okay, the Trump administration deploying 1,000 National Guardsmen to D.C. And what's interesting is that they say that they will act as a rapid response element to protect federal property, almost like they're preparing for chaos in the streets, riots. You don't send 1,000 National Guardsmen to clean up crime. Okay, it's just not something you do. So I don't know if the Trump administration has some intelligence that something's about to go down and they want to deploy the National Guard ahead of time, but it's interesting that it's only going to go through September 25th, so we need to be on high alert. Now, Trump said that they would potentially deploy National Guard in New York and Chicago as well. And there was an explosion at North America's largest coking plant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're hearing that 2 people died after an explosion tore through a Pennsylvania steel plant on Monday, local officials confirmed. So this was the U.S. Steel Clairton site just outside of Pittsburgh, and we're hearing that as many as 10 people were injured. Currently, there is no known cause of this explosion, so it could have been a sleeper cell. This is the largest coking plant in North America. So a coking plant is basically like a refinery for coal. So they take bituminous coal, which is like a high sulfur coal. It's a lower grade coal that's readily available, and they heat it up to turn it into like pure carbon. And this way it has a higher temperature when it's ignited, and then they use that refined coal to produce steel and mix different alloys to heat up the metal to get it hot enough, because regular coal won't do it unless you have anthracite coal, which is not as common as bituminous coal. It's more expensive. So very, very interesting. It seems, based on what this plant does, it's very critical to the production of steel in this country, which is important for our war machine, for our economy. It seems like a sleeper attack to me, but... And Israel's Security Cabinet approved the Prime Minister's plan to defeat Hamas. The IDF will prepare to take control of Gaza City while continuing to distribute humanitarian aid outside of combat zones. And the Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that an Israeli ground invasion of Gaza is the best way to end the war. He said, "Our goal is not to occupy Gaza, our goal is to free Gaza." And the Israeli Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, stated earlier today during a visit to southern Lebanon that the military has approved plans for the conquest of Gaza. Okay, so we're hearing multiple indicators that Israel is basically getting ready to occupy Gaza and annex it and incorporate it as part of Israeli territory, or maybe create some kind of a security zone there. And Iran's defense minister said the Iranian armed forces are prepared to confront any new attack from America and Israel. And the Israeli prime minister said that 400 kilograms, that's almost 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium, still remain in Iran. And we knew in advance that it would not be damaged during the U.S. strikes. Okay, so Israel still knows that Iran has enriched uranium. And I think Israel's going to strike Iran again. They're going to strike those facilities again. Israel is likely to start a new war with Iran before December, possibly even by the end of August, according to the Foreign Policy magazine. The publication believes that Israel's June war was not entirely related to Iran's nuclear program, but was largely aimed at changing the balance of power in the Middle East. So a second attempt is quite possible. It is noted that Iran is expecting an attack and is preparing for it. Wow. And the E3 group, which consists of France, Germany, and the UK, has informed the UN that they intend to reinstate major economic sanctions against Iran if they do not return to the negotiating table regarding their nuclear program by the end of August, according to a report by the Financial Times. So that's big news. The biggest countries in Europe will be placing sanctions on Iran by the end of August. And a Russian state newspaper reported that Syria requested Russia to deploy forces to the border areas with Israel again, as was the case during Assad's regime. But then a Syrian source familiar with the matter said that Russia was the one who proposed the idea to the Syrian side, which has not agreed to it so far. So looks like Russia wants to bring troops back into Syria and deploy them along the Israeli border, which is what happened during the Assad regime. Russia had several border outposts, which is very concerning, and that goes back to the Bible, the Ezekiel 38 and 39 prophecy that talks about Russia and an alliance of countries in the Middle East attacking Israel. And apparently a Chinese naval vessel collided with a Chinese Coast Guard vessel as the Chinese Coast Guard vessel was preparing to confront a Philippine Coast Guard vessel. And this happened near Bayo de Masinloc in the West Philippine Sea on Monday. So here we have footage of that. Check this out. So what you're looking at here is the Chinese Coast Guard vessel, and then out of nowhere, a Chinese naval vessel shows up and collides with the Chinese Coast Guard. And it almost looks like the Chinese naval vessel was protecting the Philippine vessel. So this was filmed from the deck of the Philippine Coast Guard ship. Check this out. So this is the Chinese naval vessel, basically like blocking the Chinese Coast Guard vessel. Very strange. Absolutely insane. And I want to just play this clip for you of Trump announcing that he's going to be federalizing police in D.C. and also deploying the National Guard. This is historic, in my opinion.
And we're here for a very serious purpose, Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
So big news there. And Azerbaijan's foreign ministry has published the text of the peace agreement with Armenia that was signed with Trump, revealing its key provisions. The countries renounced territorial claims and pledged not to make any in the future. No third country forces will be stationed on the Azerbaijan-Armenia border. Azerbaijan and Armenia will carry out border delimitation based on a separate agreement. The countries plan to develop economic, transit, transport, environmental, and cultural cooperation. Baku and Yerevan will establish a special commission to oversee the implementation of the agreement. So this is big news, guys. Armenia and Azerbaijan have been at war for a long time over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. And Russia actually had Iskander missiles in Armenia for a long time, and they had thousands of Russian troops there, and they have since withdrawn from Armenia. So this is a big loss for Putin, because the Caucasus are now stabilizing and also under the influence of the U.S. Okay, we have two major countries in the Caucasus: Azerbaijan, which is a natural gas and oil power. They have lots of oil and natural gas, is now under the influence of Trump. And then Armenia, same thing, also under the influence of the Trump administration. So big loss to Putin there. And China says that it monitored and expelled a U.S. destroyer near the Scarborough Shoal and called it a violation of sovereignty. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the U.S. is in the process of designating the Muslim Brotherhood a terror organization. Wow. And here we have a clip of Trump saying he's going to do the same thing he did with D.C., federalizing the police and deploying National Guard. And here we have a clip of Trump saying he's going to federalize the police in New York City and Chicago. Take a listen.
And we're going to have the same thing here. But then I'm going to look at New York in a little while. Let's do this. Let's do this together. Let's see. It's going to go pretty quickly. And if we need to, we're going to do the same thing in Chicago, which is a disaster. We have a mayor there.
So very interesting. And here we have video footage of a Chinese fighter jet flying close to a Philippine plane in the Philippine Sea, not far from where that collision occurred. Check it out. So that's the Chinese fighter jet as filmed from the cockpit of a Philippine Air Force plane. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight with a live update. Check me out on Patreon for text updates. If you don't have time to watch these videos, I post text updates. I have taken a break the last 2 weeks because I've been sort of on a break from YouTube, handling some personal things, and I haven't been able to post a text update in like 2 weeks, but I will post one today. So check out my Patreon, support me over there to bypass the censor tube and all this stuff going on with the age verification scheme that YouTube has rolled out. The way we can bypass that is to go over to other platforms, and Patreon is the best one in my opinion. So check it out, patreon.com/NYPrepper. You can get first access to my videos there without any advertisements. So you can watch my whole video without any advertisements there in the video. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.